curator here at the Museum of Art, and also curator for Local Color, Judy, Chicago, and New Mexico, 1984 to 2014. It's my honor to welcome you here to St. Francis Auditorium tonight for the program, a conversation on collaboration with artists Judy, Chicago, and Donald Woodman, and curators Marianne Redding and myself. First, I have a few brief announcements. I would like to acknowledge the patience of those who arrived at 5 p.m. today due to the misprint in the Santa Fe Reporter. Thank you for sticking it out, and I hope we live up to your expectations. Secondly, I would like to remind everyone that we will have an opening reception Thursday, August 28th from 5 to 7 p.m., hosted by the Women's Board of the Museum of New Mexico. This reception is for a series of exhibitions, including Alcoves 1917 to 1927, guest curated by Malin Wilson Powell, and the second installment of our year-long series, Focus on Photography, curated by the New Mexico Museum of Art's own curator of photography, Catherine Ware. This next series includes a one-person exhibition, Delilah Montoya Syncretism, a group exhibition, Cameraless, featuring photographs made without benefit of a camera, and an updated photo lab installation centered around historic, alternative, and mixed media photography. Lastly, I would like to ask that you make sure the ringers are off on your cell phones, and we'll begin tonight's presentation. Is there something blocking this? There. The topic of tonight's conversation is collaboration. When I first began working with Judy on her exhibition, we began to discuss public programs, and it came as a surprise to me that no one had ever asked she and Donald to speak together about the work that they have made together. Therefore, it seemed only fitting, with Judy Chicago's exhibition, Local Color, installed here at the New Mexico Museum of Art, and Donald Woodman's exhibition, Transformed by New Mexico, installed at the New Mexico History Museum, that we take advantage of the opportunity and explore their decades-long collaboration in life as well as art. Our conversation this evening will circle around the topic of conversation. I will talk briefly about Judy's exhibition, Local Color, and Marianne Redding, curator of Donald Woodman's exhibition at the History Museum, will discuss Donald's work and exhibition. We will then, all four, participate in a dialogue about Donald and Judy's unique collaboration. Without question, Judy Chicago was brought to broad national and international attention for her most famous work, The Dinner Party, currently installed at the Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum. Aside from all of its aesthetic, social, and political and historical significance, The Dinner Party was a large-scale collaboration. Ooh, how did that happen?
You want me to do it from here?
Let's go to the next one. Yeah, thanks. Involving more than 400 volunteers and more than 6 years in production. Our exhibition here at the Museum of Art focuses on work made later and opens at an interesting pivot point in Judy's career as an artist in relationship to collaboration. I think that maybe the water pitcher is blocking this. So let me...
I can do it from here.
Okay, great. If we can go to the image of the entry to the exhibition. Thank you so much. Chronologically, we begin with the series Power Play, made as an individual artist, painting and drawing in the studio. This large-scale project was the first that Judy began to work on while The Dinner Party was traveling and while another large-scale collaborative project, the Bird Project, was in production. Power Play is a series of works in a range of media and scale that investigate the social construct of gender, looking particularly at perceptions of masculinity and its association with power and violence. It was while working on this series that Judy met and ultimately married photographer Donald Woodman. This partnership in life has also become a prolific partnership in art. Local Color includes two projects that the artists produced together. Nuclear Wasted, which addresses the human and environmental consequences of the nuclear industry in New Mexico, was created while they're working on their largest scale collaboration, the Holocaust Project From Darkness into Light, a large-scale exhibition, audio guide, and publication. Both of these co-produced projects pair and layer Donald's evocative photographic imagery and technical proficiency with Judy's skill as a draft person and storyteller. The pairing of their diverse set of skills works for me in many ways, but most simply, the photographic images seem to ground the artwork we are looking at in fact, truth, and reality, while the painting and drawing and text expand on these truths, drawing us in, demanding that we think and feel deeper. For nearly 3 decades, Judy and Donald have lived and worked together, and they have continued to make work as individual artists. Tonight, we'll discuss, with prompting from Marianne and myself, how this collaboration works, maybe how it sometimes doesn't work, and how their work together impacts their individual studio practice. It is now my pleasure to introduce Marianne Redding, curator of Donald Woodman Transformed by New Mexico. Marianne Redding is currently the chair of the photography department and curator of the Marion Center for Photographic Arts at Santa Fe University of Art and Design. And beginning September 1st, Marianne will assume the position of curator at the Turchin Center for the Visual Arts at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. It's my pleasure to welcome Marianne Redding and my staff.
Thank you, Mary. And thank all of you for joining us tonight to celebrate the creative careers of Donald Woodman and Judy Chicago. Sometimes the collaboration between artists and curators is an intricate dance, and it's very often hard to tell who's actually leading that dance. I first met Donald Woodman in 2004 when I was working on an exhibition for the New Mexico State University Fine Art Gallery in Las Cruces. I was searching for artists because I was new to the state then for a regional exhibition, and someone referenced Donald Woodman. So I looked up his phone number, called him, and to my surprise, he answered the phone like on the second ring. And I explained who I was, what I was doing, and I asked if I could see him for a studio visit. He agreed. So in the days before the studio visit, I kept saying to myself, why do I know this man's name? Who is this masked man? Why is he so familiar? And then I did a little bit more research on Donald, and I went, oh yeah, he's married to Judy Chicago. Okay, well, don't let that intimidate you. You're going to look at his photographs. So that's what I did. I went. And actually, Donald wasn't included in that regional show. He actually was given a show of his own. Forgive the pun on Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. And we have been collaborating on a series of exhibitions, projects, and events, which I hope we will continue to do in the future after my husband and I leave the Southwest for the Southeast at the end of this month. So Donald and our first collaboration was Photography in Transition, an exhibition and catalog that included Donald's work on the Rodeo in the West, the Holocaust Project, 15 Clouds, The Therapist, and Harbingers of Which Future, which opened at NMSU and traveled to several other venues. And our most recent project is the exhibition Transformed by New Mexico, which is now on view at the New Mexico History Museum. And that exhibition really celebrates Donald's gift to the Photo Legacy Project at the Photo Archives. That was started when I was the curator at the History Museum and is now in the capable hands of Daniel Kosharek, who is the new curator of photography at the History Museum. There's a very interesting book called Significant Others, Creativity and Intimate Partnership, that looks at famous partnerships in art and life, exploring the complexities of partnerships and collaborations, painful as well as enriching, through a shared creative context. One of the central questions raised by the book is this: if the dominant belief about art and literature is that they are produced by solitary individuals, but the dominant social structures are concerned with familiar and matrimonial structures, how do two creative people escape or not the constraints of this framework and construct an alternative story? So that is some of what we're going to explore tonight. And I think that part of being in a sexual and creative relationship is allowing your partner to have other relationships, particularly with curators. who are among other things, a necessary evil. Actually, they're part of the dance of bringing your creative work to an audience. And that's part of why Mary and I are here in this presentation for two exhibits in two separate but related museums, two artists who happen to be married and very often collaborate, but in this instance are working with two very different curators. So Donald has always collaborated. He discovered his potential as a creative photographer through studying with Minor White, who was in the 60s and 70s the leading voice for photography's personal expressive powers. Try saying that 6 times fast. White instilled in his students the idea that photography could be used for deep psychoanalytical investigations through its metaphoric capabilities, that photographs reveal not only their visual subject, but also the inner lives of their makers. Donald has continued this photographic exploration up through his work on The Therapist. This series visually investigates the artist's developing relationship with his therapist, Dr. Donald Feinberg, over 4 years in an extended portrait, to the extent that eventually the artist's wife, another artist, was brought into the sessions and into the photographs. Many people engage in a personal therapy over a lifetime, but not many have the courage to show the visual evidence of that process in photographs that transcend the personal and reach a universal level of interest. And in all relationships that deepen over time, Transformed by New Mexico provided a unique opportunity for myself, for this curator, to see into the past and read an artist's mind, in this case Donald. Usually this happens long after an artist has died, but luckily Donald is alive and well, and very much willing to dance. So in preparation for the exhibition at the History Museum and writing an essay for El Palacio, I spent several afternoons in Donald and Judy's art warehouse reading Donald's diaries from the 70s up to the early 80s when he met Judy and they began their intimate lifetime collaboration. And if you're interested, those diaries will eventually be given to the photo archives at the History Museum. I don't know how long Donald's going to restrict them, but they'll be there. Donald would leave me alone in the warehouse for hours that I spent reading, taking notes, and looking through boxes of negatives and Polaroids. There aren't any windows in the art warehouse, so I lost track of all time and the notion of past and present. I was immersed in the story of an artist that, like so many others, had left the East Coast for the Southwest. And what I want to do is read to you a brief quote from one of Donald's diaries. This is something that Donald wrote on June 11, 1972, after he had arrived here in New Mexico in the desert. He wrote, "Sunspot, New Mexico, is a slice right out of middle America's suburbia, and I fear that I may slip into the mainstream of society here, wherever that is. I will regress about 10 years. At times, I lapse into fears of copping out because I am working at an Air Force-owned and operated thing near our famed missile testing site at White Sands. This especially haunts me when I catch the news, which I try to avoid, and it shows the results of our bombing in Vietnam. Haven't I any moral commitment to anything, I ask myself? Of course, the things that have always plagued me are who I am and where I am going. And yes, what is the concept of work all about? Oh yes, the concept of time has been injected into my veins." So when I was reading this diary, suddenly Donald would appear. It would startle me out of nowhere, and I have to remember what year it was and reconcile the man who was standing in front of me with the man who was on the pages of the diaries that I had just been reading. Luckily, Donald never did become mainstream. He continued to wear his curly hair long. That was a long time ago. He got involved in anti-Vietnam efforts, was always questioning authority, something he still does today. He did and does still struggle with his personal doubts and fears as an artist. He hopped in and out of bed with all sorts of friends and colleagues and acquaintances during those years, and then he met Judy, which seems like an appropriate place to turn the microphone over to this conversation. Thank you very much.
So let's start by talking about how do you negotiate the intimate, personal, professional, and artistic relationship, because you're so close in all those arenas. Mine, it's not going? Okay, first of all, how do you negotiate your intimate, personal, and professional relationship with your artistic relationship? And then we can talk about some of the larger scale project, Holocaust project, and also move through some of these others as well. It's lots of artists work. Many artists work together who are couples, but I don't think on such projects with such long duration. The Holocaust project itself was 8 years.
Buy a large building and create separate studios and kind of go.
I can't hear you either.
Are your mics on?
Are you muted?
No?
I don't think so. I'm not.
Come on. Come on.
It's just a little.
1, 2, 3, testing. Hello? Hello?
Bring your mic up closer.
No, I don't think that's what it is. Can you hear me? Lesson 1 on how collaboration works. I'm just kidding. 'Cause,
It was off.
was off.
It's on now.
We can hear you now.
Okay, it's on now.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, why don't we start over? And why don't we talk about, I know that when we look at power play in the particularly driving to the world to destruction, there's an area of that painting where the flames are painted, where you talk about you always seem to talk about when you were dating Donald and talking to him about the flames and the intensity of the flames. And while it was your individual work, it seemed as though you were already beginning an artistic dialogue.
Actually, I think it's important to understand that Donald and I met, we met 7 times, and I didn't notice, which was like fucking blind. Anyway, but I just wasn't looking. We finally met and started dating. We kind of ignited it was just over 29 years ago. And at that time, I had already out of power play, and my understanding that I was brought up in a secular Jewish household, and my father was descended from 28 generations of rabbis and broke away. In fact, he broke away so much that when my mother and he were dating, and they went to his mother's house for dinner on Friday night every week. She kept kosher. And after one such meal, my mother asked him if he wanted her to learn how to cook Jewish food. And he said, no, I'm allergic to Jewish cooking. As a result, I just knew nothing about my heritage, although I knew that in some ways it had shaped who I was. All I knew was what my father said was that I had blue blood because we were descended from a very famous 17th century rabbi. At any rate, I had gotten interested in the subject of the Holocaust right before I met Donald. And it was September of 1985, and Shoah, the Cloud Lanzmann film, was about to premiere in New York. And Donald's working on this book about his relationship when he was with Agnes Martin. He was her assistant for 7 years, and he talks in the book about how impulsive he was, how he impulsively
film is 9 hours long. It's shown in 2 4.5-hour segments. And sitting in the dark in a movie theater, experiencing this for the first time together, created a kind of bond that was unique.
So it wasn't like, we had prior plans. We just walked out of that theater, and I don't even remember when we decided we were going to learn more together. We were going to start on.
Well, you already started working on the subject when we met.
I was just starting to think
Just
about
right.
it.
And then you said to actually at that time I was in partnership in a construction company. It was sort of the New Mexico artist fallacy that you're going to start a construction company that will support you so you can do your art. That wasn't working. But Judy said to me, do you want to work on the project with me? And I said yes. And that meant that I had to quit this idea of starting a construction company, which I did, and we went to work.
And be a photographer
Be a
full
photographer.
time.
Full,
What a terrible idea.
so there wasn't a hard choice to make, but it was an impulsive choice, because I've been working at this. I was in partnership with an architect friend in Santa Fe, Richard Yates, and we had a company that did rammed earth structures, and I had been involved in writing the earth building codes for the state. So I have an undergraduate degree in architecture, so it wasn't so far-fetched. It was much better choosing to be a photographer.
But could we have the next image? But then, forward. Yeah. So 3 months after our first date, we got married. It was not something that I would recommend as a life choice, but for us it worked. I mean, I'm not sure how many other people would get married, would meet, fall in love, get married, and start working on a project all at once together, but we did. But then we had a little segue, a surprising segue. 3 weeks after we got married, we were living, by then, I was living